When twins Ava and Zora Johnson boarded Skyway Airlines first class for the first time, they expected a few curious looks, but nothing could prepare them for what followed. To senior flight attendant Melissa Graves, the sight of two black girls in luxury seats was an invitation to target and humiliate. The twins endured her cutting remarks and public accusations, forced to walk the aisle in shame as cameras captured every moment. But as the sting of injustice turned to quiet fury, Ava dialed their father, desperate for help. What Melissa never expected was that their father was Skyway's CEO, and one phone call from his daughters would halt the flight, unravel a web of lies, and force the entire world to watch. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Johnson family home, casting warm rays across the polished hardwood floors. Ava stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her navy blue blazer and matching pleated skirt, while Zora meticulously packed her carry-on bag nearby. "Did you remember to pack your charger?" Ava asked, turning to her twin sister. "Last time you borrowed mine the whole trip." Zora rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. "Already packed. And my backup battery, too." She zipped her bag with a flourish. "I'm not making that mistake again." Their mother Nina appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her doctor's scrubs for her morning shift at the pediatric clinic. "Girls, breakfast is ready. Your father's waiting downstairs." The smell of fresh waffles and bacon wafted up the stairs, making both girls' stomachs rumble. They grabbed their bags and hurried down to the kitchen, where Elijah Johnson sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone while sipping coffee. "There's my conference companions," he said warmly, looking up from his device. He wore a crisp charcoal suit that matched his distinguished salt-and-pepper hair. "Ready for Seattle?" "More than ready," Ava declared, sliding into her seat and reaching for the syrup. "I can't wait to see the Space Needle." "And the first edition books at Elliott Bay," Zora added quietly, buttering her waffle with careful precision. Nina moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, packing snacks into small bags for the twins. "Now remember, girls, you're representing not just yourselves, but your father, too. Best behavior in first class." "We know, Mom," they chorused together, making their parents exchange amused glances. "I've arranged for you both to wait in the Skyway Lounge while I handle some calls," Elijah explained, checking his watch. "The staff knows to expect you." The twins shared an excited look. The exclusive first-class lounge was a treat they'd only experienced once before, during last year's family trip to Paris. As they finished breakfast, Nina fussed over their appearance, straightening Ava's collar and tucking a loose strand of hair behind Zora's ear. "Text me when you land, okay? Both of you." The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson was filled with the girls' chatter about Seattle's attractions, while Elijah made hands-free calls to confirm his conference schedule. Morning traffic moved steadily, the Atlanta skyline gleaming in their rearview mirror. At the departure terminal, Nina hugged each of her daughters tightly. "Be good for your father," she whispered, then turned to Elijah. "Keep our girls safe. Always," he promised, kissing her goodbye. Inside the bustling airport, they joined the priority security line, their carry-ons rolling smoothly behind them. Ava noticed how people's eyes followed her father, some with recognition, others with curiosity. Being the CEO of Skyway Airlines made him a familiar face in these halls. "Your boarding passes, please," the TSA agent said, studying their documents with extra attention when she saw the Johnson name. After clearing security, they walked through the terminal's wide corridors, passing shops and restaurants just opening for the day. The twins' school shoes clicked against the polished floor in perfect synchronization. "Here we are," Elijah announced as they reached the discreet entrance to the Skyway first-class lounge. He showed their passes to the attendant, who smiled warmly. "Welcome, Mr. Johnson. We have your usual workspace ready." The lounge was elegantly appointed with leather chairs, soft lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway. A breakfast buffet offered fresh fruit, pastries, and barista-made coffee. 30 minutes tops, Elijah promised, checking his phone again. "Help yourselves to breakfast if you're still hungry. And girls?" He fixed them with a gentle but serious look. "Remember what your mother said." "Yes, Dad," they answered together. "That's my girls." He squeezed their shoulders before heading to a private conference room. Ava and Zora settled into plush chairs near the windows, watching planes taxi across the tarmac in the morning light. A server approached with a tray of fresh orange juice. "Would you young ladies care for anything else?" she asked kindly. "No, thank you," Zora replied politely, while Ava shook her head. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey ahead. Ava pulled out her phone to check their flight details again, while Zora retrieved a book from her bag. "I can't believe we get to fly first class without Mom and Dad," Ava whispered excitedly. Zora looked up from her book with a small smile. "Dad trusts us. We can't let him down." Through the lounge's windows, they watched as their Skyway plane arrived at the gate, its silver fuselage gleaming in the morning sun. In just a few hours, they'd be on the other side of the country, watching their father take the stage at one of the biggest aviation conferences of the year. The airport terminal buzzed with pre-flight activity as Elijah walked his daughters to Gate A7. Ava adjusted the strap of her leather messenger bag, a birthday gift from her father, while Zora clutched her book closer to her chest. Their matching Navy outfits made them look like they'd stepped out of a prep school brochure. "You have your boarding passes?" Elijah asked, even though he'd checked twice already. "Right here, Dad." Ava patted her bag, while Zora nodded, holding up hers. "And you remember your seats?" "2A and 2B, they answered in unison, making him smile. "That's my girls." He pulled them both into a warm embrace. The familiar scent of his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, made them feel safe. "I'll be on the next flight out after my meeting, just 4 hours behind you." His phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. Checking the screen, he frowned slightly. "I need to take this. It's about the conference." He looked at them apologetically. "Will you be okay?" "We've got this, Dad," Ava assured him, standing a little straighter. "Go ahead," Zora added softly. "We'll text you when we land." With one last quick hug, Elijah stepped away, his phone already to his ear as he walked toward the terminal lounge. The twins watched him go, then turned to face the gate counter where boarding had just begun. "First-class passengers may now board through Gate A7, the gate agent announced over the intercom. Ava squared her shoulders and led the way, Zora following close behind. They presented their boarding passes to the agent, whose eyebrows lifted slightly as she scanned them. "Welcome aboard, Miss Johnson." "And Miss Johnson," she said, her professional smile warming as she looked between them. "Have a pleasant flight." The jet bridge stretched before them like a tunnel to adventure. Their shoes made hollow sounds on the metal flooring as they walked toward the aircraft door. Ava could feel Zora's excitement radiating beside her, though her sister maintained her usual calm exterior. "Good morning. Welcome aboard." A flight attendant greeted them at the door, gesturing left. "First class is right this way." The first-class cabin gleamed with soft leather seats and polished surfaces. Other passengers were already settling in. A businessman in an expensive suit, an elderly couple arranging their belongings, a woman in yoga clothes sipping sparkling water. Ava led the way to their seats, conscious of the eyes following them. Some passengers smiled kindly, while others did double takes, their gazes lingering a beat too long. A man in seat 1C peered over his newspaper, frowning slightly before returning to his reading. "Here we are," Ava announced, perhaps a bit too loudly, claiming the window seat 2A. Zora slid gracefully into 2B beside her. They began their well-practiced airplane routine, Ava pulling out her noise-canceling headphones and tablet, while Zora retrieved her book and reading light. The seats were wide and comfortable, with plenty of legroom and personal screens built into the backs of the seats in front of them. "Would you like a pre-departure beverage?" a young flight attendant asked, stopping at their row. "Apple juice, please," Zora requested politely. "Make that too," Ava added with a smile. A woman across the aisle caught Ava's eye and smiled warmly. "First time flying alone?" "No, ma'am," Ava replied proudly. "Our dad is the C." Zora subtly elbowed her sister. They'd agreed not to advertise their father's position unless necessary. "We've flown before," Zora finished diplomatically. The cabin continued to fill as more first-class passengers boarded. The twins could hear the steady stream of people filing past to economy class behind them. They sipped their apple juice from real glasses, feeling sophisticated and grown up. "Your carry-ons, ladies?" A new voice cut through their conversation. They looked up to find a senior flight attendant standing over them, her blonde hair pulled back severely from her face. Her name tag read Melissa Graves, and her lips were pressed into a thin line. "Under the seats in front of us," Ava answered, pointing to their properly stowed bags. Melissa's eyes narrowed as she looked them up and down, taking in their matching outfits and first-class seats. Her gaze lingered on their faces, then their boarding passes tucked into the seat pockets. "And you're supposed to be in these seats?" she asked, her tone carrying an edge that made Zora sit up straighter. "Yes, ma'am," Zora replied quietly, while Ava felt her face grow warm at the implication. Melissa leaned closer, checking their seat numbers against their boarding passes with exaggerated care. Her perfume was overwhelming, something floral and expensive that made Ava's nose itch. "Seat belts, please," Melissa instructed curtly, watching as they pulled the straps across their laps and fastened the buckles with practiced ease. Her eyes continued to sweep over them suspiciously, as if searching for some reason to challenge their presence in her first-class cabin. Ava and Zora had just settled back into their seats when Melissa's shadow fell over them again. The senior flight attendant loomed above, her presence more intimidating than before. "I need to see your boarding passes one more time," Melissa announced loudly, holding out her hand. Several passengers turned to watch the exchange. Zora reached for her pass, but Ava hesitated. "You already checked them," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Now!" Melissa demanded, snapping her fingers. The sharp sound made both girls jump. They pulled their boarding passes from their seat pockets and handed them over. Melissa made a show of examining each one, turning them over and holding them up to the light as if checking for counterfeits. "These are expensive seats," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the first-class cabin. "Are you sure these belong to you?" Ava felt her cheeks burning. "Yes, they're ours," she replied firmly, though her hands trembled slightly in her lap. "Really?" Melissa's eyebrows arched high. "Because these are premium first-class tickets. Do you understand how much these seats cost?" The businessman in 1C lowered his newspaper. The woman across the aisle, who had smiled at them earlier, frowned, watching the interaction with growing concern. "Our father bought them for us," Zora explained quietly, her usual calm voice tight with tension. Melissa let out a short, skeptical laugh. "Your father? And what does your father do that he can afford such expensive tickets?" Ava started, but Zora squeezed her hand in warning. They didn't want to play that card unless absolutely necessary. "Ma'am," Ava tried again, sitting up straighter. "We have valid tickets for these seats. You've checked them twice now." "Don't take that tone with me, young lady," Melissa snapped, her professional demeanor slipping. "I've worked these flights for 25 years, and I know when something isn't right." The elderly couple in row 3 exchanged uncomfortable glances. A young man in a business suit 2 rows back had pulled out his phone, holding it low but pointed in their direction. "There's nothing wrong with our tickets," Zora insisted, her soft voice carrying a rare edge of frustration. Melissa leaned down, bracing one hand on the armrest between them. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper, but still loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Listen here. These seats are reserved for our premium customers, people who belong here." The emphasis she placed on belong made her meaning crystal clear. Ava's hands clenched into fists, while Zora's face remained carefully neutral, though her eyes glistened. "We do belong here," Ava stated, her voice shaking with both anger and hurt. "We have every right to be in these seats." "Is there a problem here?" the woman across the aisle asked, finally speaking up. Melissa straightened immediately, plastering on a fake smile. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Ensuring everyone is in their proper place." "Their tickets are valid," the woman pointed out. "I saw you check them before." "Protocol requires thorough verification," Melissa replied stiffly, "especially in unusual circumstances." More passengers were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable, others concerned. A few were clearly recording with their phones. The twins sat rigid in their seats, feeling the weight of all those eyes on them. "If you need to verify our tickets again," Zora said carefully, "perhaps you could check with the gate agent who scanned them." Melissa's face flushed red. "I don't need to be told how to do my job by a child," she hissed. She slapped their boarding passes down on their tray tables. "This isn't over." She turned on her heel and stormed toward the galley, her shoes clicking sharply against the floor. The cabin remained unusually quiet in her wake, filled only with the sound of the aircraft's systems and muted whispers. Ava's hands were shaking as she picked up her boarding pass. Zora reached over and squeezed her sister's arm, offering silent support, even as she blinked back her own tears. "Are you girls okay?" the woman across the aisle asked softly. Ava nodded stiffly, not trusting her voice. Zora managed a quiet, "Yes, thank you." Around them, passengers exchanged knowing looks and whispered conversations. The young man with the phone was still recording, though trying to be discreet about it. The elderly couple looked deeply troubled, the wife shaking her head in disapproval. The twins sat in uncomfortable silence, their earlier excitement completely deflated. Zora's book lay forgotten in her lap, while Ava's headphones remained untouched. They could feel the tension hanging in the air, thick and oppressive, as they waited to see what Melissa would do next. "Maybe we should call Dad," Ava whispered to her sister. "Not yet," Zora replied quietly. "Let's wait and see if she comes back first." They sat straight-backed in their premium leather seats, no longer feeling sophisticated and grown up, but instead like unwanted intruders in a space where someone had decided they didn't belong. The cabin air felt thick with tension, as Ava and Zora tried to push past their earlier confrontation with Melissa. They sat close together, shoulders touching, finding comfort in each other's presence as they always had. "Remember that time Mom caught us switching places in 3rd grade?" Ava whispered, attempting to lighten the mood. The memory brought a small smile to Zora's face. "Mrs. Peterson didn't notice for 3 whole days," Zora replied softly, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "Until you couldn't help correcting everyone's math problems." "Hey, they were getting the answers wrong," Ava protested, keeping her voice low but playful. The familiar banter helped ease some of their anxiety. The beverage cart approached, pushed by a different flight attendant who offered them a kind smile. "What can I get for you, ladies?" "Orange juice, please," Zora requested politely. Ava asked for the same. Their drinks arrived in real glasses, not the plastic cups used in economy. Zora held hers carefully, aware of Melissa's hawk-like stare from the galley. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the glass to her lips. "These seats are so nice," Ava commented, trying to distract her sister. "Way better than—" The words cut off as Zora's glass wobbled. Time seemed to slow as the orange juice sloshed over the rim, splashing onto the cream-colored leather armrest and speckling the gray carpet below. "Oh no! Oh no!" Zora gasped, mortified. Her face flushed deep red as she frantically reached for the cocktail napkin under her glass. "Sorry, sorry, we'll clean it up," Ava said quickly, grabbing more napkins from her own drink. Both girls leaned down, dabbing at the spilled juice with desperate energy. The sharp click of heels against carpet announced Melissa's approach before her shadow fell over them. The twins froze, napkins clutched in their hands, as the flight attendant's presence loomed above them like a gathering storm. "This is first class, not a cafeteria," Melissa announced, her voice carrying clearly through the quiet cabin. Several passengers looked up from their tablets and magazines. "It was an accident," Ava explained, her words rushing out. "We'll make sure it's clean, we promise." Melissa's lips curled into a sneer as she surveyed the scene. "Clearly you're not used to seats like these." The contempt in her voice was unmistakable. A middle-aged man across the aisle extended his hand, offering additional napkins. "Here, let me help." "That won't be necessary," Melissa cut him off, swatting the napkins away without even looking at him. Her eyes remained fixed on the twins, cold and calculating. The girls continued blotting at the spill, their movements growing more frantic under Melissa's hostile scrutiny. The leather armrest was already clean, but they kept wiping, desperate to prove they could handle themselves properly in first class. "Stand up. Now!" Melissa's command cracked through the air like a whip. Before either girl could fully process what was happening, Melissa's hands shot out. Her fingers closed around Ava's collar, bunching the fabric tight against her throat. Her other hand clamped down on Zora's arm, fingernails digging through the sleeve of her sweater. "You don't belong here," Melissa hissed, her face inches from theirs. "I'll take you where you belong." With shocking strength, she yanked them to their feet. The twins stumbled, caught off balance by her aggressive grip. Ava's shoe caught on the seat leg, and she nearly fell, saved only by Melissa's cruel hold on her collar. "Move!" Melissa ordered, shoving them into the aisle. The twins staggered forward, their feet tangling as they tried to keep up with her harsh pace. The walk of shame began. Past the businessman who'd offered napkins, his face now turned away in discomfort. Past the elderly couple who'd witnessed the earlier confrontation, the wife's hand pressed against her mouth in shock. Past rows of strangers who either stared openly or suddenly found their magazines fascinating. Phone cameras appeared, recording their humiliation. The soft clicks and whirs seemed deafening in the uncomfortable silence. No one spoke. No one intervened. Melissa marched them through the curtain dividing first class from economy, her grip never loosening. The narrow aisle seemed endless as they stumbled past row after row of passengers, their faces burning with embarrassment and unshed tears. Finally, Melissa stopped at 2 empty seats near the back of the plane. With a rough shove, she pushed them toward the row. "Sit!" she commanded, as if speaking to misbehaving dogs. The twins collapsed into the seats, Zora by the window, Ava in the middle, their shoulders pressed together as they huddled close, seeking comfort in each other's presence. The sting of injustice burned in their throats, threatening to spill over in hot tears they refused to let fall. Around them, economy passengers whispered and stared, some with sympathy, others with curiosity. The weight of their gazes felt suffocating. The girls sat rigid, chins lifted despite their trembling lips, fighting to maintain whatever dignity they could in the face of such blatant discrimination. Ava's hand shook as she pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers fumbling with the screen. Tears blurred her vision, but she managed to find her father's number. Next to her, Zora's quiet sniffles broke her heart. "Dad!" Ava choked out when Elijah answered. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Dad, you need to come back. Please, "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Elijah's warm, steady voice carried through the speaker. The concern in his tone made it harder for Ava to hold back her tears. "The flight attendant, she grabbed us, Dad. She grabbed my collar and Zora's arm. She dragged us out of first class." The words tumbled out between shaky breaths. Ava pressed the speaker button so Zora could hear too. "She what?" The sharp edge in Elijah's voice made both girls flinch. "She said we don't belong there," Zora added softly, leaning closer to the phone. "She made us walk through the whole plane. Everyone was watching, Dad. They were filming us." A middle-aged woman across the aisle looked over sympathetically, her brow furrowed with concern. In front of them, a college student turned around, no longer pretending not to listen. "Which flight attendant?" Elijah's voice was controlled but tight with anger. "What's her name?" "Melissa Graves," Ava said. "She's still up there in first class, acting like nothing happened. She hurt us, Dad. My neck still hurts where she grabbed my collar." Heavy footsteps approached down the aisle. Melissa's shadow fell over them once again, her face twisted with rage. "Give me that phone right now," she demanded, reaching for Ava's cell. Ava clutched the phone tighter, turning away. "No! I'm talking to my father. This is a violation of airline policy," Melissa snapped, trying to pry the phone from Ava's grip. Her long nails scratched Ava's hand. "Dad, she's trying to take my phone," Ava cried out, struggling to maintain her hold. "She's hurting me again. Get your hands off my daughter!" Elijah's voice boomed through the speaker, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear clearly. "I am Elijah Johnson, CEO of Skyway Airlines, and those are my children you've been assaulting." Melissa froze, her face draining of color. The college student in front let out a low whistle. Whispers rippled through the cabin as passengers processed this revelation. "Girls, stay exactly where you are," Elijah commanded. "I'm calling ground control right now. Nobody touches you, understand? Put me on video call." Ava's trembling fingers switched to video mode. Elijah's face appeared on screen, his usual calm demeanor replaced by fierce determination. Melissa took an involuntary step back. "I can see you, Ms. Graves," Elijah said coldly. "Step away from my daughters immediately." Melissa retreated another step, her swagger evaporating. More passengers turned to watch the scene unfold, phones discreetly recording. "Zora, honey, are you hurt?" Elijah asked, his voice gentling when he addressed his daughters. "My arm's sore where she grabbed me," Zora admitted. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing red marks where Melissa's fingers had dug in. "Show me," Elijah instructed. Ava angled the phone so he could see the marks on Zora's arm, then the reddened skin around her own collar. The sympathetic woman across the aisle spoke up. "I saw everything, sir. That flight attendant manhandled these girls. It was completely inappropriate." "Thank you, ma'am," Elijah replied. "I'd appreciate if you'd make a formal statement later." More passengers chimed in, offering their witness accounts. The college student held up his phone. "I got video of them being dragged through first class, sir. Happy to share it." Melissa backed further away, her composure crumbling as the situation spiraled beyond her control. She turned and hurried toward the front of the plane, disappearing behind the curtain. "Girls, I've already contacted my assistant," Elijah assured them. "Ground control has been notified. Just stay calm and keep me on the line." The twins huddled together, drawing strength from each other and their father's virtual presence. Around them, the atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. Passengers who had stayed silent during their humiliation now spoke in angry murmurs, sharing their recordings and discussing what they'd witnessed. "This is your captain speaking." A voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through the tension. "Due to a security incident, we will not be departing at this time. Please remain in your seats." Minutes later, heavy boots thundered up the jet bridge. 3 airport security officers boarded the plane, their presence commanding immediate attention. They conferred briefly with the flight crew, then made their way down the aisle toward the twins. "Miss Johnson? Miss Johnson." The lead officer addressed them professionally. "Your father sent us. Are you both all right?" Ava and Zora nodded, still clutching the phone, showing Elijah's face. The officer spoke into his radio. "We have eyes on the minors. They appear shaken, but unharmed. Requesting Ms. Graves be brought to the jet bridge for questioning." The second officer took statements from nearby passengers, while the third documented the marks on the girl's arm and collar. The entire cabin buzzed with activity and whispered conversations as the gravity of the situation became clear to everyone on board. Through it all, Elijah remained on video call, his steady presence a reminder that justice was coming. The twins held on to each other and their phone, watching as their father's authority transformed their humiliation into a moment of reckoning. The security officers stood protectively near the twins as a fourth officer appeared at the front of the plane. "Ms. Graves," he called out firmly, "please come with us." Melissa emerged from behind the first-class curtain, her face a mask of indignation. Her hands smoothed her uniform compulsively as she walked down the aisle, chin held high despite the stares of passengers. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was just doing my job." "Ma'am, please proceed to the jet bridge," the lead officer instructed, his tone leaving no room for argument. As Melissa passed the twins' row, she shot them a cold glare. The security officer closest to the girls stepped forward, blocking her view. "Keep moving, ma'am." Passengers watched in tense silence as Melissa was escorted off the plane. The moment she disappeared through the door, the cabin erupted in hushed conversations. "Can you believe how she treated those girls?" a woman whispered to her seatmate. "I got the whole thing on video," another passenger said, holding up his phone. "Already sent it to my daughter. She works for a news station." The lead security officer turned to Ava and Zora. "Your father has requested you return to your original seats in first class. Would you like an escort?" The twins nodded, gathering their belongings. Elijah was still on video call, watching everything unfold. "I'll be there soon, girls," he assured them. "Officer, please stay with them until I arrive." As they walked back through the cabin, several passengers offered words of support. "You girls okay?" asked an elderly man in an Atlanta Braves cap. "Those were your seats, fair and square," added a businesswoman in a sharp suit. The college student who had filmed the incident gave them a thumbs up. "Don't let them get away with this." When they reached first class, scattered applause broke out. A flight attendant, not Melissa, rushed to help them settle in, her hands shaking slightly as she offered them water. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she whispered, glancing nervously at Elijah's face on the phone screen. "Ms. Graves, she doesn't speak for all of us." Ava and Zora sank into their original seats, still holding hands. Their father's face on the phone screen showed a mix of concern and determination. "Just a few more minutes, girls. I'm almost there." Around them, the first-class cabin buzzed with activity. Passengers tapped on their phones, sharing videos and posting about the incident. A man in a business suit cleared his throat and leaned toward the twins. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up earlier. I saw what happened, and it was wrong. I've already emailed a complaint to Skyway's customer service." More passengers chimed in with similar apologies and support. The flight attendant brought extra pillows and blankets, hovering anxiously nearby as if trying to make up for her colleagues' behavior. Through the windows, they could see Melissa being escorted across the tarmac to a security vehicle. Several ground crew members stopped their work to watch. "Your dad's the CEO?" a young woman asked from across the aisle. "That flight attendant really messed up." Zora managed a small smile. "Yeah, he is. Look at this," the woman said, turning her phone screen toward them. "It's already trending on Twitter." Hard Skyway racism. Ava and Zora exchanged glances but said nothing. Their father had taught them about handling public attention with grace. They could hear his voice in their heads. Sometimes your silence speaks louder than words. The cabin crew huddled near the galley, throwing nervous glances toward the twins. The captain emerged from the cockpit, his face grave as he spoke quietly with the lead flight attendant. As the minutes stretched into hours, the twins' flight remained grounded at the gate due to the ongoing investigation and security incident. Outside, the Atlanta afternoon sun faded to early evening. Then, to the twins' shock, a ripple of movement caught their attention. Elijah Johnson strode onto the plane, having raced back from his meeting when he heard what happened. "Daddy!" both girls called out, their composure finally breaking. Elijah reached them in 3 long strides, gathering both daughters into his arms. "I'm here now," he murmured, holding them close. "You're safe." The cabin fell silent as passengers watched the reunion. Elijah's face, so familiar from news coverage and company materials, was now etched with parental concern and barely contained anger. He turned to address the flight crew, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet cabin. "I'm Elijah Johnson, CEO of Skyway Airlines. I trust everyone here understands the gravity of what occurred today." The captain stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Johnson, sir. We're preparing an incident report now." "Good," Elijah replied, his tone measured but firm. "Because this will be handled at the highest level. No passenger on any Skyway flight should ever experience what my daughters endured today." Phones continued to buzz throughout the cabin as news of the incident spread. The twins could see passengers sharing videos, posting updates, and making calls. Their private humiliation had become a public story, one that would soon reach far beyond this single flight. The security officer who had stayed with them approached Elijah. "Sir, we'll need statements from your daughters when you're ready. And there are reporters gathering in the terminal." Just as the Johnsons began to settle, commotion erupted at the front of the plane. Melissa Graves marched back on board, flanked by a man in a Skyway management uniform and another security guard. Her face was flushed with anger, but there was a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "There they are!" Melissa pointed dramatically at the twins. "Those are the girls who threatened me and tried to steal from other passengers." Ava and Zora stiffened in their seats. Elijah's arm tightened protectively around them. "That's a lie!" Ava burst out, her voice shaking with disbelief. The supervisor, whose name tag read Mr. Parker, held up his hand. "Everyone needs to remain calm. We have a serious situation here." 2 other flight attendants emerged from the galley, nodding vigorously at Melissa's accusations. "They were extremely aggressive," said one, a thin woman with pinched features. "I saw them refusing to follow crew instructions." The other attendant chimed in. "They were disrupting the whole cabin. Very threatening behavior." Passengers exchanged confused looks. The man who had filmed earlier stood up. "That's not what happened at all. I have video—" "Sir, please remain seated," Mr. Parker cut him off. "This is now an internal airline matter." Elijah rose slowly to his full height, his expression carefully controlled. "As CEO of this airline, I believe this is very much my concern." "Mr. Johnson," Parker said, his tone condescending, "given your personal involvement, I must ask you to step back. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. The flight will be delayed until we sort this out." More security officers entered the plane. The cabin buzzed with tension as passengers pulled out phones again, recording the new confrontation. "My daughters were assaulted," Elijah said quietly, but his voice carried, "There are dozens of witnesses." Melissa stepped forward, her voice rising hysterically. "They tried to steal a passenger's laptop, and when I confronted them, they became violent." "That never happened," Zora protested, tears welling in her eyes. "You're making things up." The businessman who had apologized earlier stood up. I was sitting right here the whole time. Those girls never left their seats until you dragged them out. Sir, please, Parker said dismissively. We'll need official statements from everyone. The security officers began moving through the cabin, collecting passenger accounts. Some spoke up immediately, defending the twins. Others looked away uncomfortably as Melissa and her colleagues continued making accusations. They were throwing things, one flight attendant claimed. They refused to show proper documentation, another added. They threatened to have me fired, Melissa insisted, her voice trembling with fake emotion. Ava and Zora huddled closer to their father, overwhelmed by the lies being hurled at them. Elijah kept one hand on each daughter's shoulder, his jaw clenched tightly. I want my union representative present, Melissa announced suddenly. And I want to press charges for assault. The cabin erupted in protests from passengers who had witnessed the true events. This is outrageous, called out the woman with the news contact. We all saw what really happened, shouted another passenger. Mr. Parker raised his voice over the commotion. This flight is now canceled. We'll need all passengers to deplane while we conduct our investigation. Elijah pulled out his phone, quickly dialing. Get me legal on the line immediately, he spoke into it. And contact PR. This ends now. Security officers approached the Johnsons with notebooks ready. We'll need statements from all of you. Ava and Zora looked exhausted, their earlier confidence shattered by the barrage of false accusations. They leaned against their father as they recounted their experience for what felt like the 100th time. And you're certain Ms. Graves initiated physical contact? The officer asked. She grabbed my collar, Ava said quietly. It still hurts. She pulled both of us out of our seats, Zora added. We never touched her. Through the windows, they could see news vans arriving at the terminal. Passengers being escorted off the plane held their phones high, still recording. Melissa stood with her group near the front, whispering urgently with Parker, and occasionally pointing at the Johnsons. Her earlier hysteria had calmed into something more calculated. Mr. Johnson, a security supervisor, approached them. We'll need to continue this discussion inside the terminal. Elijah nodded, helping his daughters gather their belongings. Stay close to me, he murmured to them. As they moved toward the exit, passengers called out words of support. We've got your backs, girls. Don't let them twist this around. We know the truth. The family emerged onto the jet bridge to find it lined with people holding up phones and cameras. News crews waited at the gate, their lights already blazing. Ava and Zora pressed closer to their father, overwhelmed by the attention. Elijah's face remained stoic, but his hands were gentle as he guided his daughters through the chaos. This way, please. A security officer directed them toward a side door, away from the growing media presence. Behind them, they could hear Melissa's voice rising again, playing to the cameras. I was just doing my job. I'm the victim here. The twins exchanged a weary look. Their quiet morning flight had turned into a nightmare, and from the growing crowd at the gate, they knew it was far from over. The fluorescent lights of the airport lounge cast harsh shadows as security escorted the Johnson family through a maze of corridors. Camera flashes burst through the glass walls, and reporters pressed against the windows, their mouths moving in silent questions. Elijah positioned himself between his daughters and the growing media circus. Ava clutched her phone, scrolling through social media with trembling fingers. Dad, she whispered, her voice cracking. Look at what they're saying about us. Zora leaned over to read the screen. Breaking news alerts splashed across multiple platforms. Disruption at Atlanta Airport, unruly passengers delay flight, and Skyway Airlines reports safety incident with minors. Don't read that stuff, Elijah said firmly, trying to take the phone. But Ava pulled away, her eyes wide with horror. They're calling us criminals, she protested. The airline just posted a statement saying we were a safety risk to other passengers. A PR representative from Skyway, Amanda Chen, approached them with a tight smile. Mr. Johnson, we need to discuss the official response. The media is requesting comments. My daughters were assaulted by your employee, Elijah stated, his voice carrying across the lounge. Several passengers from the flight, waiting nearby, nodded in agreement. Amanda lowered her voice. Sir, the situation is more complex than that. We have multiple crew statements indicating aggressive behavior. You mean the lies Melissa and her friends made up? Zora interrupted, wiping angry tears from her eyes. More cameras appeared at the windows. Security guards tried to block the view, but reporters kept finding angles to film through. Those are serious allegations, Amanda continued, her professional demeanor slipping slightly. Ms. Graves is a senior crew member with an exemplary record. The company has to protect... Protect who? Elijah cut in. The racist flight attendant who manhandled my children, or the 14-year-old girls she assaulted? A news broadcast playing on the lounge TV caught their attention. The anchor's voice filled the space. Skyway Airlines reports that 2 young passengers caused a significant disruption this morning, leading to flight delays. Sources say the individuals became confrontational when questioned about their first-class tickets. Ava made a small, hurt sound. Elijah pulled both girls closer, his jaw tight with anger. That's not what happened, called out the businessman from the flight. He had followed them into the lounge. I saw the whole thing. That flight attendant was completely out of line. Other passengers joined in, voices rising in support of the twins. I've got video of what really happened. Those girls didn't do anything wrong. Amanda's phone buzzed constantly. She glanced at the screen, her expression growing more stressed. Mr. Johnson, the board is requesting an immediate conference call. They're concerned about the public relations impact. The impact of racism in my airline? They should be concerned, Elijah responded coldly. More Skyway executives filtered into the lounge, their faces grave. They huddled with Amanda, throwing worried glances at the Johnson family. Zora's phone chimed with a news alert. Dad, look! They're interviewing Melissa outside. On the screen, Melissa Graves stood before a forest of microphones, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I was terrified, she sniffled. They became so aggressive when I simply asked to verify their tickets. I've never experienced anything like it in my 20 years of service. That's not true, Ava shouted at the screen. She's lying. She's lying about everything. Security approached again. Mr. Johnson, we need to move your family. The media presence is becoming disruptive. Through the windows, they could see more news vans arriving. Reporters pressed against the glass, shouting questions. Mr. Johnson, did your daughters assault the flight attendant? Is it true they tried to steal from other passengers? Why were they traveling without supervision? Elijah's phone erupted with notifications. The board of directors was demanding an emergency meeting. The PR department sent urgent messages about damage control. News outlets from across the country requested statements. Sir, Amanda tried again, the company has to address this situation. Without admitting fault, we suggest releasing a statement that you're recusing yourself from any investigation due to personal involvement. No, Elijah stated firmly. I will not stand aside while my children are slandered. The board feels... I don't care what the board feels. I care about justice for my daughters. Security finally cleared a path through a service corridor. As they walked toward the parking garage, Elijah's phone continued its relentless buzzing. Messages from the board grew more demanding. Control this situation immediately. PR nightmare developing. Need damage control strategy now. The corporate machine was turning against them. Each notification made it clearer. The company's PR team wasn't trying to help them tell the truth. They were actively working to bury it. In the parking garage, away from the cameras at last, Ava and Zora slumped against their father. The morning's excitement about their trip had been replaced by exhaustion and hurt. "Dad?" Zora asked quietly. "What happens now?" Before Elijah could answer, his phone lit up with another call from the board chairman. The screen displayed an urgent message. "Either handle this the right way, or we will." The Johnson family's kitchen, usually filled with warmth and laughter, felt heavy with tension that evening. Nina had prepared comfort food, mac and cheese, collard greens, and fried chicken, but nobody felt much like eating. The twins sat close together at the dinner table, shoulders touching, as they recounted the morning's events. "She grabbed me right here," Ava said, touching her collar, "like I was some kind of criminal. And when she pulled us up," Zora added, rubbing her arm where Melissa had gripped her. "She didn't care that everyone was watching. She wanted them to see us being humiliated." Nina reached across the table, squeezing both girls' hands. "My babies," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." Elijah sat at the head of the table, his laptop open, scrolling through social media posts about the incident. His face grew darker with each click. "The videos are disappearing," he muttered. "3 different passengers told me they posted footage, but I can't find them anymore." He tapped furiously at his keyboard. "Someone's working overtime to scrub this clean." Ava's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. "What is it?" Nina asked. "Nothing," Ava mumbled, but Zora reached for the phone. "Show them," she insisted. "They need to know what people are saying." Reluctantly, Ava handed her phone to her parents. Messages from classmates filled the screen. Some were supportive. "OMG, girl, are you okay? That flight attendant was totally racist." But others were cruel. "Maybe you should have stayed in your place," and "First class is too good for your kind anyway." Nina's hand shook as she set the phone down. "I'm calling the school first thing tomorrow." "It won't help," Zora said quietly. "They never do anything about it." Elijah's phone rang. Another board member calling. He silenced it without looking, his attention fixed on his daughters. "Tell me everything again," he said. "Every detail matters." The twins took turns describing the morning's events. How excited they'd been to fly first class. How Melissa had appeared immediately suspicious. The way her voice changed when she spoke to them, dripping with contempt. She kept saying, "These seats are expensive, like we must have stolen the tickets," Ava recalled, pushing her untouched mac and cheese around her plate. "And when she grabbed us," Zora continued, "she whispered, 'I'll put you where you belong.' Like we were animals or something." Nina stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "I should have been there," she said. "I should have gone with you." "No," Elijah said firmly. "This isn't about what we should have done differently. This is about what they did wrong." His phone buzzed again. This time, the name made him pause. Marcus Thompson, his longtime mentor and the man who'd helped him climb the corporate ladder at Skyway. "I need to take this," Elijah said, stepping into his home office. "Elijah," Marcus's familiar voice was grave. "Things are moving fast up here. The board is meeting right now." "Good. They need to address this immediately." "Not the way you're hoping, son." Marcus sighed heavily. "They're preparing to suspend you." Elijah's grip tightened on the phone. "Suspend me? For what?" "They're calling it a conflict of interest, saying you can't be objective about an internal investigation involving your own children." "This isn't about objectivity," Elijah growled. "This is about right and wrong. I know that. But they're worried about the optics. The stock's already dropping. Melissa Graves has powerful friends in the company, and her story is gaining traction." Through the office door, Elijah could see his family at the dinner table. Nina had her arms around both girls, their heads resting on her shoulders. His daughters, bright, beautiful, innocent, branded as troublemakers, for the crime of existing in the wrong space. Listen to me carefully, Marcus continued. If you back off now, let the PR team handle this their way. You can protect your position. Fight this battle another day, when you're stronger. Elijah watched Ava wipe fresh tears from her eyes as she showed her mother another cruel message on her phone. He saw Zora's shoulders shake with silent sobs. "No," he said quietly, but with steel in his voice. "I won't back down. Not this time. Elijah, I've spent my whole career walking the line, Marcus. Being careful, not making waves. But what message would I be sending my daughters if I let this go? What kind of father would I be? The kind who can still provide for them, still make changes from the inside." "No," Elijah repeated, stronger now. "I'm going to fight this. I'm going to protect my girls and my position. The board wants a war? They've got one." He ended the call and returned to the kitchen table, pulling his chair closer to his family. Nina looked up, reading his expression. "Bad news?" she asked. "Nothing we can't handle together," he replied, reaching for both twins' hands. "We're going to fight this, girls, all of us, and we're going to win." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the Johnsons' kitchen windows, but the mood remained somber. Nina made pancakes, trying to maintain some normalcy as Ava and Zora picked at their breakfast. Elijah sat reviewing emails on his tablet, his coffee growing cold beside him. A notification pinged on Elijah's phone, a direct message from an unfamiliar account. He almost dismissed it as another reporter, but something made him pause. "Mr. Johnson," the message read, "my name is Lena Ortiz. I was a flight attendant on yesterday's Seattle flight. I saw everything that happened to your daughters. There's more you need to know. Melissa Graves has a history, and I have proof." Elijah's heart raced as he read further. "I've been documenting incidents for months. Videos, emails, crew complaints, all buried by HR. Melissa's aunt is Catherine Graves, head of HR. They're protecting her. Please, can we meet somewhere private? I want to help." He showed the message to Nina, who read it with widening eyes. "Could it be a trap?" she whispered, glancing at the twins who were now arguing over the last pancake, a welcome moment of normalcy. "Maybe," Elijah admitted, "but something about this feels genuine." He typed back carefully. "Why are you willing to help?" The response came quickly. "Because what happened to your daughters wasn't right. And it wasn't the first time. I've stayed quiet too long, watching Melissa target passengers of color. Yesterday was the last straw." Nina read over his shoulder. "Ask her for proof before we meet." Within minutes, Lena sent a video clip, grainy footage from a phone, showing Melissa berating an elderly Asian couple 2 months ago. "I have dozens more," she wrote, plus internal emails about complaints that were dismissed. "But I don't want to send more electronically. They monitor our accounts." Ava noticed her parents huddling over the phone. "What's going on?" "We might have an ally," Elijah said carefully. "Someone from the flight crew wants to help." Zora perked up. "The nice one? The lady who kept checking on us after they put us in economy?" "You remember her?" Nina asked. "Yeah," Ava nodded. "She brought us water and kept apologizing with her eyes. She looked really upset about what Melissa did." Elijah studied his daughter's reactions. "Would you recognize her if you saw her again?" Both girls nodded emphatically. After careful consideration and several more messages, they arranged to meet Lena that evening at a small coffee shop across town. Elijah insisted the whole family come. He wanted the twins to identify her before he shared any sensitive information. The coffee shop was quiet when they arrived, just a few students with laptops occupying corner tables. The Johnsons chose a booth near the back, positioned so they could see the door. At exactly 7 o'clock, a young woman in casual clothes entered. She looked different without her uniform, but the twins immediately sat up straighter. "That's her," Zora whispered. Lena approached cautiously, clutching a large envelope to her chest. Her eyes darted around the shop before she slid into the booth. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about yesterday. I should have spoken up sooner." "You're speaking up now," Elijah replied. "That's what matters." Lena placed the envelope on the table, keeping her hand on it. "I need you to understand the risk. If they find out I'm doing this, I'll lose my job. Maybe worse." "We can protect you," Nina assured her. "Elijah has resources." "No," Lena interrupted. "I don't want protection. I want this to stop." She turned to the twins. "What happened to you? I've seen it before. Too many times." She opened the envelope carefully, spreading out documents and flash drives. 6 months of documentation. Videos from crew areas where Melissa thought no one was watching. Emails between her and HR about passenger incidents, always involving people of color. Complaint forms that mysteriously disappeared from the system. The family leaned forward, examining the evidence. Elijah's hands shook as he read through emails showing clear collusion between Melissa and her aunt to bury complaints. "How did you get all this?" he asked. "I'm good with computers," Lena said simply. "And Melissa's not careful when she thinks she's among friends. She doesn't see me as a threat." A bitter smile crossed her face. "She calls me the help when she thinks I can't hear." Ava reached across the table, squeezing Lena's hand. "You're really brave." Lena squeezed back, her eyes glistening. "No, what you girls did was brave. Standing your ground, calling your father. That took courage. I'm just trying to make it right." "This is exactly what we needed," Elijah said, carefully returning the documents to the envelope. "But are you sure about this? Really sure? Once we use this evidence, there's no going back." "I'm sure." Lena nodded firmly. "I'll testify if I have to. Whatever it takes." The twins exchanged glances, hope brightening their faces for the first time since the incident. Nina reached for her husband's hand under the table, squeezing it supportively. "We won't let your courage go to waste," Elijah promised Lena. "Together, we're going to make sure this never happens to another family." Back at the Johnson house, the dining room table became their command center. Laptops glowed in the dim light as midnight approached. Pizza boxes and empty coffee cups littered the edges of the table, evidence of their hours of work. "Look at this email thread," Lena said, pointing to her screen. "Melissa complained about a Nigerian family in first class last month. Said they were disrupting the premium experience, but the passenger feedback forms showed they were quiet and polite." Elijah leaned in, scanning the exchange. "And her aunt buried the counter-complaints?" "Every time." Lena pulled up another document. "Catherine has a system. She marks discrimination complaints as customer service issues and buries them in bureaucracy until people give up." Nina organized printed documents into folders, color-coding them by incident type. "The pattern is clear, but we need to release this carefully. They'll try to discredit Lena immediately." "I've thought about that," Lena said, pulling out her phone. "I have contacts in the flight attendants union. They've been collecting their own evidence of discrimination. If we coordinate..." Ava and Zora sat cross-legged on the couch nearby, their own laptops balanced on their knees. They'd been quiet for the past hour, focused intently on their screens. "Dad," Ava called out. "Remember that civil rights lawyer who helped Cousin Marcus last year? She's online right now. Should I message her?" Elijah nodded. "Good thinking. Send her everything we have. But mark it confidential." Zora looked up from her laptop. "I found 3 other passengers from yesterday's flight posting about what happened. They have videos, too." "Ask if they'll share them privately first," Nina cautioned. "We need to control how this comes out." The twins worked together, reaching out to supporters through their social media networks. Their fingers flew across keyboards as they crafted careful messages, building a digital army, one contact at a time. "My youth activism group is ready to help," Zora said. "They can spread the story once we go public." "Same with my debate club," Ava added. "They're all fired up about it." Lena watched the twins with admiration. "You two are amazing at this. I was so worried about speaking up, but seeing you fight back, it gave me courage." The girls beamed at her. In just hours, Lena had become more than an ally. She was family. Around 2 in the morning, Elijah's phone buzzed. "The civil rights lawyers are on board," he announced. "They're drawing up statements now. And they've contacted their media connections." Nina yawned but kept working. "Good. We'll need their support when the airline tries to spin this." "They already are," Lena said grimly, showing them Skyway's internal message board. "They're telling employees not to comment on yesterday's incident and claiming there's an ongoing investigation." "Let them investigate," Ava said fiercely. "We have the truth." They worked through the night, building their case piece by piece. Lena's evidence formed the foundation, but they added passenger statements, social media posts, and expert legal opinions. Everything was uploaded to secure servers, ready to share with trusted journalists and activists. As dawn approached, the twins set up a private social media campaign, ready to launch with a single click. They created hashtags, wrote posts, and lined up supporters to amplify their message. "Look at this," Zora said suddenly. She turned her laptop to show a news website's homepage. "They're already asking questions about yesterday. The videos must have gotten their attention." Indeed, several major news outlets had picked up the story of the incident, though they were still reporting the airline's official version. "Perfect timing," Elijah said. He checked his watch. 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. "Wall Street opens in 4 hours. Ready?" Everyone nodded. They had prepared statements, evidence packages, and media contacts. Nina handed out fresh cups of coffee, while Lena double-checked their secure uploads. "Remember," Elijah said, looking at each face around the table, "once we start this, there's no going back. The airline will fight dirty." "We're ready," Ava declared, Zora nodding beside her. "More than ready," Lena agreed. At exactly 6 a.m., they began. The twins activated their social media campaign. Elijah sent evidence packages to major news outlets. Nina contacted civil rights organizations. Lena reached out to her union contacts. Within minutes, their phones began buzzing with notifications. The story spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Skyway racism started trending locally, then nationally. By 7 a.m., the first major news website published a detailed exposé, featuring Lena's evidence and the twins' story. Other outlets quickly followed. "Look," Zora pointed to the TV, where a news ticker showed Skyway's stock price dropping in pre-market trading. Reporters began calling Elijah's phone. The airline's PR team scrambled to respond, but they were too late. The truth was out. Ava hugged her sister, then Lena. "We did it. We're just getting started," Elijah reminded them, but he was smiling. "The real fight begins now." They gathered around the table one last time, exhausted but determined. Outside, the sun rose on a new day, and their phones kept buzzing with messages of support and media requests. The truth was spreading, and nothing could stop it now. The Skyway corporate boardroom buzzed with tension. 14 board members sat around the massive mahogany table, their faces tight with worry. Elijah stood at the head of the table, his posture straight and dignified despite having been awake for over 24 hours. "The stock has dropped 15%, Board Chairman Wilson Peterson announced, his voice sharp with anger. "Our reputation is in tatters. Major corporate clients are threatening to cancel their contracts." "Then perhaps we should address the real problem," Elijah said calmly. The systemic racism in our company that allowed this to happen. Don't be dramatic, Elijah. Catherine Barnes, the head of HR and Melissa's aunt, cut in. This was an isolated incident that's been blown out of proportion. Elijah pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. I'm recording this meeting, he announced. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. For my protection, given recent events. This is highly irregular, Peterson protested. So is assaulting children in first class, Elijah countered. So is covering up years of discrimination complaints. Catherine's face reddened. Those complaints were properly investigated. They were buried, Elijah interrupted. Just like you tried to bury what happened to my daughters. The board has reached a decision, Peterson said, sliding a document across the table. We're offering you a generous severance package. For the good of the company, we need you to step down immediately. Elijah didn't even glance at the paper. Instead, he looked each board member in the eye, one by one. My daughters were assaulted on one of our planes. They were humiliated, dragged through the aisles like criminals. And your response is to try to force out the CEO who wants to address the problem? We're trying to protect the company, another board member argued. No, Elijah's voice filled the room. You're trying to protect yourselves. You're trying to hide years of looking the other way, while employees like Melissa Graves abused their power. While complaints disappeared into Catherine's filing system. He stood taller, his presence commanding the room. I've spent my entire career walking the line between being professional and being true to myself. I've smiled through microaggressions, stayed calm in the face of disrespect. I did it because I believed I could change things from the inside. The board members squirmed as Elijah continued. But when my 14-year-old daughters were attacked on one of our planes, that line disappeared. I will not step down. I will not be quiet. And I will not allow this company to continue operating as if it's still 1950. This is bigger than your daughters, Peterson warned. You're right, Elijah agreed. This is about every black passenger who's been questioned, every brown family that's been moved to the back, every employee of color who's been passed over for promotion. It's about doing what's right, not what's convenient for the board. Catherine stood up, her face flushed. This is blackmail. This is accountability, Elijah corrected. And it's long overdue. The meeting ended in chaos, with Peterson threatening legal action and several board members storming out. Elijah's phone kept recording until the last person left. Hours later, the recording leaked online. News channels played excerpts of Elijah's speech on repeat. Social media exploded with support. Stand with Elijah trending alongside Dahmer, Skyway racism. But as night fell, the retaliation began. The first sign was the email from Ava and Zora's private school. The administration cited concerns about disruptive behavior and threatened to suspend the twins. Then came the news that Lena had been arrested on charges of stealing company documents. Around midnight, the sound of breaking glass jolted the Johnson family awake. From their windows, they watched three figures in hoodies spray-painting racial slurs on their garage door and throwing rocks through their car windows. Nina called the police while Elijah held his daughters, who trembled not with fear, but with anger. The vandals fled before officers arrived, leaving behind their hateful messages and shattered glass. They're trying to scare us, Zora said, her voice steady despite everything. They picked the wrong family, Ava added, squeezing her sister's hand. Elijah looked at his daughters with pride and worry. They were so strong, but they were still so young to face such hatred. Nina wrapped her arms around all of them, forming a circle of protection and love. In the distance, they heard sirens approaching. Red and blue lights soon flickered across their front lawn, illuminating the damage. Officers took statements, while crime scene photographers documented everything. Inside, Nina made hot chocolate, an attempt at comfort in the chaos. The family huddled in the kitchen, their phones constantly buzzing with messages of support and concern. "Lena's lawyer called," Elijah said, checking his messages. "They're fighting the charges, but she'll have to spend at least tonight in jail." "This isn't right," Ava protested. She was just telling the truth. "Sometimes telling the truth is the most dangerous thing you can do," Nina said softly. "But that doesn't mean we stop telling it." They stayed close together as police finished their work outside. None of them would sleep much that night, but they drew strength from each other. The vandals had meant to break their spirit, but instead, they'd only made the Johnson family more determined to fight. The morning after the vandalism, Grandmother Loretta Johnson arrived at the house like a force of nature. Her silver hair was wrapped in a neat bun, and she carried 2 large canvas bags filled with home-cooked food and old photo albums. "They think they can scare us?" she announced, stepping over broken glass in the foyer. "My father marched with Dr. King. We don't scare easy in this family." Ava and Zora sat at the kitchen table, their shoulders slumped. Their phones lay dark and silent. Their social media accounts had been suspended after mass reporting by trolls. Lena was still in jail, and their father was in emergency meetings with lawyers. "I feel so helpless," Zora whispered, pushing her untouched breakfast around her plate. "Everything we tried just made things worse," Ava added, her voice cracking. "Now Lena's in jail, and we might get kicked out of school." Grandmother Loretta set down her bags and pulled up a chair. "Let me tell you something about fighting for justice," she said, taking each girl's hand. "The people in power, they always push back hardest, right before they fall. Your grandfather used to say that's how you know you're winning, when they start playing dirty." Nina brought coffee for Loretta and hot chocolate for the girls. "Mom, I'm worried about the threats," she admitted. "Maybe we should send the girls to stay with my sister for a while." "Running won't solve this," Loretta said firmly. She opened one of her bags and pulled out a stack of old photos. "Look here. This is your father when he was your age, standing up to his own school board when they tried to shut down the Black Student Union." The twins leaned in, studying the yellowed newspaper clipping. Young Elijah stood at a podium, looking determined despite his braces and oversized glasses. "What happened?" Zora asked. "He won," Loretta smiled. "Because he had evidence, and he wasn't afraid to use it." Suddenly, Ava sat up straighter. "Evidence? Grandma, will you help me look for something? I had an old phone that I stopped using last month when I got my new one." "The pink one?" Zora perked up. "With the cracked screen?" "Yes," Ava jumped up. "I recorded everything on that phone, and I never connected it to the cloud or anything. The hackers couldn't have touched it." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. The family turned Ava's room upside down, searching through drawers and boxes. Nina found old report cards. Zora discovered long-lost hair ribbons, and Loretta unearthed 3 missing socks. "Here!" Ava finally shouted, pulling the old phone from inside a boots box under her bed. "Please, please, let it still work." They all held their breath as Ava pressed the power button. The screen flickered, then lit up with a low battery warning. "Quick, get the charger!" Zora ran to her room, returning with a tangle of cords. Once plugged in, the phone slowly came to life. Ava's fingers trembled as she navigated to her video folder. "There!" she exclaimed. "I recorded everything, from the moment Melissa first came up to us, all the way through her grabbing us. You can hear everything she said." Loretta watched the video, her expression growing darker with each passing moment. The footage was crystal clear. Melissa's racist comments, her physical aggression, the shocked faces of other passengers. Most damning of all was the moment she admitted her aunt was head of HR and would take care of any complaints. "Call your father," Loretta commanded. already pulling out her own phone to contact her network of civil rights activists. This is exactly what we needed. Nina hugged her daughters tight. I'm so proud of you both. You never stopped fighting, even when it seemed hopeless. Within an hour, Elijah rushed home from his meetings. His tie was loose, and his eyes were tired, but they lit up when he saw the video. This changes everything, he said, immediately calling his legal team. The family gathered around the dining room table, now covered with laptops and phones. Loretta coordinated with her activist contacts, while Nina helped the twins create secure new email accounts. Elijah worked with his lawyers to prepare official statements and documentation. We need to release this strategically, Elijah explained. Not just to the media, but to people who can actually force change. I have a contact on the Congressional Oversight Committee, Loretta said, scrolling through her phone. They're already investigating corporate discrimination cases. The timing has to be perfect, Nina added. Once it's out there, the board won't be able to bury it. Ava and Zora sat close together, watching their family mobilize. The helplessness from earlier had vanished, replaced by determination. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for Lena, for every person who'd ever been discriminated against on a flight, for everyone who'd ever been told to stay quiet and accept injustice. Ready? Elijah asked, his finger hovering over the send button on his laptop. The twins nodded. Loretta squeezed their shoulders. Nina held Elijah's free hand. Together, they launched their counterattack. The video went out simultaneously to major news networks, civil rights organizations, and the Congressional Committee. Loretta's contacts were ready with statements and legal support. The twins' original footage began spreading across social media platforms faster than any algorithm could suppress it. The congressional hearing room buzzed with tension. Camera lights flashed as Elijah Johnson led his daughters through the crowded chamber. Lena Ortiz, released from jail just hours earlier after public outcry forced the police to drop the charges, walked beside them. Her face showed exhaustion but determination. Ava squeezed Zora's hand as they took their seats at the witness table. The long wooden desk felt massive in front of them, microphones positioned like soldiers standing at attention. Behind them, rows of spectators filled every available space, many wearing "Stand with the Johnsons" buttons. Congressman Marcus Rivera, chair of the Transportation Oversight Committee, called the hearing to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. We are here today to investigate serious allegations of racial discrimination and corporate corruption at Skyway Airlines, he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. We will hear testimony from multiple witnesses regarding an incident that has shocked the nation. Across the room, Melissa Graves sat with her Aunt Helen Graves, Skyway's head of HR, and several board members. Their faces were tight, with barely controlled anger. Melissa's perfectly pressed uniform couldn't hide her nervousness, as she repeatedly smoothed her skirt. Elijah testified first, his deep voice steady, as he detailed not just the incident with his daughters, but years of complaints that had been buried or ignored. As CEO, I was deliberately kept in the dark about discrimination reports, he explained. The board and HR created a separate system to filter out certain complaints before they reached my desk. Helen Graves shifted uncomfortably in her seat as Elijah presented internal emails proving her involvement. The committee members leaned forward, taking notes. When it was the twins' turn, Ava spoke first, her voice clear despite her nerves. Ms. Graves grabbed me by my collar, she said, pointing to the woman who had humiliated them. She said we didn't belong in first class. She didn't even check our tickets properly. She just saw 2 black girls and decided we had to be in the wrong place. Zora added her testimony, describing how other crew members had backed up Melissa's lies. They tried to make us sound like criminals, she said, but we were just sitting there, following all the rules. Lena's testimony proved devastating to the airline's defense. She presented years of documented incidents, complete with dates, flight numbers, and witness statements. I reported Ms. Graves 17 times for discriminatory behavior, Lena stated firmly. Each time, Ms. Graves personally intervened to protect her niece. I was told to remember my place if I wanted to keep my job. The committee played the unedited video from Ava's old phone. The footage was damning. Melissa's sneering face, her rough handling of the girls, her bragging about her aunt's protection. Several committee members visibly winced. When Melissa finally took the stand, her practiced customer service smile had vanished. "I was just following protocol," she insisted. "If passengers seem out of place—" "Out of place?" Congressman Rivera interrupted. "Please explain what you mean by that term." Melissa's face reddened. "I simply meant, that is, first class has certain standards." "Standards based on skin color?" another committee member asked sharply. Helen Graves tried to defend the airline's policies, but her carefully prepared statement crumbled under questioning. The board members blamed each other, pointing fingers and making excuses. "So none of you knew about the separate complaint system?" Congresswoman Chen asked, holding up a stack of emails. "Despite these messages showing you all discussed it regularly?" The afternoon wore on. More witnesses came forward. Former employees, passengers who had experienced similar treatment, civil rights experts who detailed patterns of discrimination across the airline industry. Through it all, the Johnson family sat straight and proud. Ava noticed how some committee members kept glancing at her father, clearly impressed by his composure and integrity. Zora watched Melissa's face grow paler as more evidence mounted against her. Lena caught the twins' eyes and gave them a small smile. Her testimony had been crucial, and everyone knew it. Already, social media was calling her a hero, praising her courage in standing up to corporate power. The committee called a brief recess before announcing their findings. In the hallway, supporters surrounded the Johnsons and Lena, offering encouragement and thanks. Civil rights leaders shook Elijah's hand, promising continued support for whatever came next. "You did great," Elijah told his daughters, pulling them close. "No matter what happens now, you stood up for what's right. That's what matters most." "We learned it from you, Dad," Zora said softly. Ava nodded. "And from Grandma Loretta. She always says justice wins if you're brave enough to fight for it." The room fell silent as the committee members filed back in. Congressman Rivera adjusted his microphone, his expression grave but determined. Congressman Rivera's voice filled the hushed chamber. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented today, this committee finds clear and systemic discrimination at Skyway Airlines. We are recommending immediate action." He detailed the consequences. Melissa Graves and Helen Graves were to be terminated immediately. Criminal charges would be filed for discrimination, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. The entire board would be removed and replaced. "Furthermore," Rivera continued, "we strongly recommend that Elijah Johnson remain as CEO, with expanded authority to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination reforms across the company." The room erupted in applause. Ava and Zora hugged each other tight, tears streaming down their faces. Lena smiled broadly, exhaustion forgotten in the moment of victory. Weeks later, the Johnson family walked through Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, heads held high. The same terminal that had witnessed their humiliation now felt different, transformed by justice and vindication. Airport staff stopped to greet Elijah, some offering quiet thanks for the changes already taking place. Under his leadership, Skyway had implemented mandatory anti-bias training, created a transparent complaint system, and established a diversity council with real power. "Mr. Johnson," called out a young black flight attendant trainee, "thank you for making it possible for people like me to have a real future here." Ava and Zora had become minor celebrities in their own right. Just yesterday, they'd received an award from the Youth Civil Rights Coalition for their courage in standing up to discrimination. Their speech about believing in yourself and fighting for justice had gone viral. "Look," Zora whispered to Ava, pointing to a new poster on the terminal wall. It showed diverse faces of Skyway employees and passengers with the tagline, "Everyone belongs in these skies." "Remember when we were scared to even walk through here?" Ava asked softly. "Now we're helping change it," Zora replied, squeezing her sister's hand. They passed the first-class lounge where everything had started. Through the glass, they could see Lena chatting with other flight attendants. After declining several other job offers, she'd accepted a promotion at Skyway, heading up their new employee advocacy program. Her courage had made her a symbol of change within the company. "The girls who started all this," a passenger recognized them, smiling warmly. Others nearby nodded in recognition, several offering words of support. At the gate, the new flight crew greeted them with genuine warmth. The lead flight attendant, a woman with graying hair and kind eyes, personally welcomed them aboard. "It's an honor to have you flying with us today," she said, looking each family member in the eye. "What happened to you should never have happened to anyone. Thank you for making sure it never will again." As they walked down the jet bridge, Ava remembered the fear and anger she'd felt that day. Now, those emotions were transformed into something powerful: pride in standing up, in making a difference. The first-class cabin looked just the same, but everything was different. Other passengers smiled as they took their seats. A young black girl across the aisle stared at the twins with obvious admiration. "I saw you on TV," she whispered excitedly. "My mom says you're heroes." Elijah settled into his seat, watching his daughters chat with their young fan. His phone buzzed with updates about Skyway's latest initiatives: a scholarship program for underprivileged youth interested in aviation, a partnership with civil rights organizations, new hiring policies already increasing diversity in management. The flight attendants moved through their safety demonstration, then prepared for takeoff. Through the window, Ava and Zora could see ground crew giving them thumbs up. "Remember what Grandma Loretta always says?" Zora asked, buckling her seatbelt. "Justice isn't just about winning," Ava quoted. "It's about making sure the win changes things for everyone who comes after." The engines hummed to life. Outside their window, the Atlanta tarmac began to move as the plane pushed back from the gate. Ava and Zora clasped hands, just as they had through the darkest moments of their fight. The plane gathered speed, pressing them back in their seats. Below them, the airport fell away. The sight of their humiliation transformed into a launching pad for change. The sky opened up before them, bright and blue and full of promise. In their first-class seats, earned and defended, the Johnson family soared upward together. Their victory hadn't just changed an airline, it had shown others how to stand up, speak out, and fight for justice. As the plane climbed higher, Ava and Zora watched Atlanta disappear beneath the clouds, their intertwined fingers a testament to the strength they'd found in each other, in their family, and in doing what was right. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.